Welcome to Pay Item Updates. This information is as of today, December 5th, 2018. If you have any questions on any changes since then, please feel free to contact us. My name is Melissa Hollis. I'm in the Program Management Office, and I'm the Basis of Estimates Coordinator. Our presentation has been broken into two parts. Part 1 was separate with the introduction and chapters 1 through 10 of the Basis of Estimates. This is part 2, where we will be addressing more of the pay item specific updates that have occurred over the past several months and looking forward to changes in the upcoming months. In many cases, some of the issues that I've addressed in particular pay items are items that we've learned from this past year's QARs. So we always appreciate the lessons learned, both good and bad, from our reviews. When you ask us questions, whether online or by phone, they do help us to enhance the Basis of Estimates details. So many of the issues below are the result of questions that have been submitted. Some have been submitted many times in many different formats. But please remember, the only constant is change around the department. Specification changes occur continuously. They are posted twice a year. Similarly, standard plans, formerly known as the design standards, change on a continuous basis, but are posted annually. The FDM, formerly known as the Plans Preparation Manual, also changes on an annual basis and may be affected by bulletins or memos as they are needed. In the future, you can look forward to changes related to 3D plans. But as always, we do appreciate your input and your ideas. I've had questions that have come up where somebody indicates they've attached a set of utility plans and they have concerns. They ask us for an opinion and we find out that there's no summary boxes in the plans. So I do agree with them. There are some concerns there and things that are non-compliant. But I also noted that there's removal of asbestos concrete pipe, which is another concern related to contamination and remediation of the contamination. So we find out that we do need this additional money to be encumbered for the removal of the contamination. Going back to the district estimator and the district utilities, they asked the question, has anyone addressed this contamination issue? Unfortunately not, but the project is at 100% plans and it's 3 months prior to the letting. So what turned out to be what they thought was a simple pay item question and whether the summary box was complete, turned out that they had missed a critical step early in their plans development process. So always be mindful that while you may ask a pay item question, it may not be always a pay item answer to your issue. We also see pay item requests related to, I have a special fill in the blank, a widget, a tool, a material, and they want us to give them a pay item. Well, the questions that we might ask, is it covered by a specification, a standard? Is there an APL item? Do you have a modified spec, a text spec, or a detail? Why is it unique or project specific? And will we be using it on other projects? Well, if the question is, my boat is taking on water, what do I do? Sometimes we've got different options. If you're sitting at the dock, you just get out of your sinking boat. If you're just a short ways away, you can go swimming. If you're a little further out, you may want to plug it with a rag. But if you're in the ocean, you need to call the Coast Guard. Why do I use this example? Well, one answer doesn't always apply to the one question. It always depends on your situation and where you currently are. So often we do need to ask, where is this located? How are you using it? And why do you need a pay item solution? What's non-standard about it? So again, if you're sitting at the dock, just get out. If you're within sight of land, you may want to go swimming. If it's a slow leak, plug it with a rag. And if you're in the middle of the Atlantic, call the Coast Guard. But remember, we can always assist you best when you provide those details or drafts, the specs, even a photo. Sometimes a photo is worth 1,000 words. But we always do try to assist you with the appropriate answer for your project-specific conditions. When do we use a pay item note? We talked about this a little bit in part 1 of the presentation, and it is addressed in Chapter 7. But we want to remind you that we have some designers that still want to just add more notes. Well, please remember that more is not always better. Sometimes more is just more. We have had many presentations, including our presentations at the last symposium. Just a reminder that it is covered by project review. It's covered in the basis of estimates and in the FDM, that we do not want to duplicate the specs or any other information with a pay item note. We sometimes say it's not rocket science. You need to read the spec. You need to read the pay item description and the unit of measure. But like rocket science, if you fail to follow the directions, it may have disastrous outcomes. If it's a location or quantity specific information, use the summary box or notes column. If it's materials, method of measurement, or basis of payment information, again, you want to generally look at those on the summary box and where those can be covered. If needed, you may want to update the specification if that's what your requirement is. Looking closely at specific pay items. In our 100s, we have available special detours or pedestrian special detours. For our special detour, very limited temporary drainage information is permitted, and you can use the design notes column. For example, you may need to indicate that 24 feet of 30-inch pipe is necessary to maintain drainage. However, remember that base or asphalt or other thicknesses are not permitted in the special detour information, as it is the contractor's responsibility to construct and maintain the special detour. We also use separate items for signs, barriers, and other pay items. So please do not include those in your special detour quantity. Something new that we have expected for July of 2019 is a pedestrian special detour where walking surfaces or some type of mat may be necessary. and we do expect to have a bulletin issued either this month or in the early part of 2019, and a new summary box will be available. This item will be a lump sum item, but with secondary units of square yards, where the square yard quantity must be tabulated within the summary box. Again, we do not want to specify the material of the surface. The contractor may choose from many different materials that will all meet the ADA requirements for a firm surface. Our pedestrian longitudinal channelization device is one of those items that has switched units of measure between linear foot and each. We are back with the linear foot measurement, but we do need to show those locations and quantities in the summary box and on the plan sheets. Please note that not all different types of channelization devices are acceptable for pedestrian use. So please look at the approved products list and the specification to see which types of products are acceptable. Temporary highway lighting. This temporary lighting is for the benefit of the traveling public, the vehicles, and not for the contractor's night work. Per the bulletin that was issued in early 2018, lighting is not required for most projects. When the district determines that highway lighting is necessary, the plan details, including the quantities, locations, and duration, do need to be provided to ensure that the bidder has enough information for bidding purposes. Therefore, we have a new summary box that will also be available in the January 2019 CADD release. And the summary box does require that the locations be identified by phase, along with the number of light poles that will be used. This will enable the contractor to be able to determine how much conductor and other materials are needed to support those light pole locations that are identified. Some items that we've had for quite a while, but still come up with many different comments and concerns, are temporary signalization and maintenance and our temporary detection and maintenance. These items generally go together on any project where there's an existing signalized intersection. We want to estimate for each intersection for the full duration of the project. So it's an each day item. And the reason that we do this for the full duration of the contract is the maintenance part of the pay item and specification. That if there's a signal failure during the contract period, the contractor will be required to maintain the signal. Similarly, if the detection device, whether it's a loop or camera or other type of detection, fails to perform or is interrupted during due to milling, the contractor is required to maintain detection throughout the duration of the contract. So we do not want to include any non-intersection locations such as the automated flagger type devices. These are other MOT devices. These should only be used for those signalized intersection in accordance with the specification. We do recommend that the design notes column be used to identify the intersection, as it's helpful if it especially helpful if it varies throughout the contract, that you only need the first 2 intersections for phase 1, the next 2 intersections for phase 2, etc., for operations that move along a corridor. Again, if you need any assistance on these, please work with your district estimates office or the central office estimates group. We'll be happy to assist. Officers out in the field. We have 2 different types of officers, and we're always ensuring that the correct officer pay item is used. The 102.14 pay item for traffic control officer is to be used in accordance with maintenance of traffic and section 102 when the officer is physically directing traffic or otherwise controlling the vehicular paths, and this pay item is controlled by the contractor because it is generally used during MOT setup, MOT takedown, and others as indicated in the specifications and design standards. Completely different from the traffic control officer is the 999-102 pay item for speed and law enforcement officer. The 999 item is used to encumber funds for use by the engineer in controlling speed. In the past, it was frequently used on limited access roadways, but it may be used in accordance with the CPAM by the engineer for other situations. But again, the pay item and the payment comes directly from the department to the agency, and the contractor is not involved in that pay item at all. So again, please ensure that you're using the correct officer for your needed situations. Moving on to the 110 items, clearing and grubbing is a lump sum item, but the secondary unit of measurement is acres. The designer must enter the acre quantity into the designer interface. The estimating reports will show the acre quantity, but the bid reports will only show the 1 lump sum quantity. I know this has been confusing to some depending on which report they were looking at, but please make sure that you are entering that secondary unit of measure into the designer interface. If there are any special features that need to be identified, you can always use that design notes column. The clearing and grubbing item for removal of existing concrete is a square yard item. Please remember that the area for walls uses that vertical projected area, while horizontal items such as sidewalk, concrete, and curb use the horizontal area. As always, you can use that design notes column to distinguish between the walls, sidewalk, and etc., just to make it easier for the bidder to identify which items you are measuring at that location. Selective clearing and grubbing is a per acre item. We have 2 options within the selective clearing and grubbing. The first is for trees to remain, and this is for use in locations where we want to allow just limited entry, and the contractor may be required to trim selected trees. The second item is for plant preservation areas. Basically, this is a big do not enter border that is placed around the area, and payment is for installing that border. Continuing on with some of the other items, 110-86 for delivery of salvageable material. We did create a change there that beginning in 2019, we would only use this pay item for significant items being delivered to DOT. Our normal delivery of signs, signals, or other lighting equipment would generally be included in the payment for the cost of the removal item. For landscape soil, section 162 or 163, we have some ongoing changes there, and please work with your district specifications office for the latest specification changes. Flowable fill. Flowable fill is covered under section 121, and it continues to be used as an option for the contractor, where payment is generally included in the related items. We do have some discussions under review to update the specification text that references section 121 from section 125 for backfill, as we do use it occasionally for some situations where we need to have immediate placement and reopening of lanes. So under discussion is the guidance for when payment is needed separately, and the end result versus the means and methods, whether we want to specify it in the plans or not, is still being discussed. So this is another issue that please work with your district specs office as needed, but do understand that for most situations the payment is to be included in the related item. In earthwork, there have been no significant changes recently. For optional base, we have had some requests for special depths for limited materials, specifically some of our graded aggregate base. So if you do have a need to have a special depth, please work with your district estimates office, and those requests are reviewed by the pavement design office and can be opened on a project specific basis. Super pave. Every now and then we see some overbuild used for temporary situations. And I would like to clarify that overbuild should only be used for the permanent slope corrections. Anytime we have a temporary application, by definition in the specifications, that is identified as a special detour. So anything that needs asphalt for MOT applications is to be paid as that special detour. So when we're using overbuild correctly for slope corrections, we want to ensure that it is totaled separately from our normal pavement levels, because the adjustments will be made per the specification, and they need those separate quantities. Please be reminded that we never add any asphalt contingency quantities, so do not adjust anything. Again, those adjustments will be made by the final estimates per the specification, but we only want to record the design quantity within our summary box without any further adjustments. For section 350, concrete pavement, please be aware that all joints are paid separately for both new and rehab concrete pavement slabs. Some of us that have been around for many years, that has changed back and forth, but the current specs do require the separate pay item for the joint ceiling. Section 400 with concrete per cubic yard. Please remember that the substructure and superstructure items are for bridge use only. We do not want to see the substructure, superstructure used for any types of drainage applications just because you're looking for a cubic yard item of concrete. That is not appropriate use of those items. And we do not want to use it for any type of sign, signal, or light pole foundation, as these are all paid as part of the sign, signal, or light pole per the specification. So if you have any other miscellaneous applications that you are uncertain about, please work with your district estimates office, and they can help you identify the appropriate item within the specification. Moving on to section 425 for manholes and inlets. If you have a special need, that will need to be coordinated with the state drainage office, and we ask that you please do that as early as possible, because sometimes the best solution is not a special type of manhole or inlet, but they may want to look at alternative designs or ensure that you have already looked at those alternative possibilities, including the flow information for the surrounding water, what's coming in and what could be going away elsewhere. So if you would please provide those details and allow 3 to 5 days for the state drainage office to review. After that, a friendly reminder is always welcome. We've had a lot of discussion about desilting over the past year or more, and the reason on that one is it is primarily a maintenance function, and within the maintenance handbooks, that desilting is recommended when the pipe has a 60% obstruction. And generally, we want to complete the desilting before construction so that the existing pipe can be inspected to determine what caused the silt buildup. Obviously, if there's a damage to the pipe, they may want to recommend a liner. They may want to recommend a pipe replacement, or there may just be an upstream issue that needs to be corrected. But rather than just waiting and doing desilting in the field and being surprised by the conditions, we generally want to have that performed prior to construction. So we want it performed as a maintenance function and the appropriate needs identified so the appropriate work can be completed during construction. When we're actually doing the pipe liner or end wall construction, then the desilting should be minimal at that time and included in the cost of the other work that's being completed. If you do have a pipe liner recommended, again, we want to coordinate with the drainage office, as they have been monitoring various locations and materials so that they can record the performance and hopefully use that information to guide future specification development. Again, we need to understand how the various materials are performing under different conditions in order to get that future guidance. Moving on to piling in section 455. Again, we want to record our quantities based on the actual lengths with no contingency quantities or adjustments made in the summary box or the planned quantities. all the adjustments, and we know that there will be adjustments per the specification for cutoffs and splices, etc. Those will all be made by construction in accordance with the specification. But we don't want to have anyone anticipate those quantities or put in contingency quantities into the plans. Moving on to the 500s. We have the 520 specification for curb, and the generic term curb is used for curb, curb and gutter, traffic separators, valley gutter, special concrete gutter, and curb for sidewalk, curb ramps, and driveways. So please remember that when we address the measurement and payment for curb, it's talking about all those types in the 520 specification. We do not need to add any pay item notes to include materials under section 520 because if you read the actual specification, it does indicate that price and payment will be full compensation for all work specified in this section, including any steel, joint materials, and the asphalt curb pad. I know we've seen that note regarding the asphalt curb pad carry over from past years, but it's already in the specification. And as we learned in part 1, that we do not want to duplicate or conflict with the specification language. Barriers. Over the last year, we've changed from using the term barrier wall to now just using the term barrier. We've also switched over from the old F shape to the single slope barrier. The standard plans were updated to reflect those current requirements. And yet we still have a few needs for the old standards to match existing conditions. Please let us know if you need a project-specific exception, but generally they will be reviewed by either the roadway or the structures office to ensure that we have all of our safety needs met. We do have some special needs around tolls because of the steel reinforcing, and the language there will just be changed over to use the term reinforcing for the glass fiber reinforcement that's used. Moving on to riprap, I do recommend that you look at the 530 specification. That some of the old materials, such as fabric formed concrete, must be approved on a project-specific basis. The reason for that, that there was a lot of cracking and other erosion issues that needed to be addressed. So we do want to get those requests in as early as possible, or as early as that need is identified, so that the drainage office can help identify whether other alternatives need to be considered, or if that is the best material for that situation. Section 523 addresses pattern pavement. There are many different types of pattern pavement, and you do want to watch the FDM for acceptable locations. It seems a little odd, but green bicycle lanes are classified as pattern pavement because of the materials that they use. And so we do want to look at the material properties, not just the appearance, and follow the process through product evaluation for any exceptions you may have. Again, we do not want to specify the materials because there are a variety of materials available on the approved products list. And the contractor does have the ability to choose from the acceptable products, and unless there's a specific need to limit them for a location. Rumble strips. We did have a bulletin in 2018 to address some of our rumble strips. Actually, there were two of them. The first one dealt with the longitudinal rumble strips that may be on the shoulder or on the edge of pavement, and they're now identified as audible and vibratory treatments. Most of these locations are based on the 50-mile-an-hour speeds and greater, but please refer to that bulletin or the updated FDM for the material and location options. The opposite or alternative type of rumble strip there is the transverse rumble strip that is placed across the roadway. And we have some new guidance that has been posted addressing index 546001, especially for those applications during construction. I know we've often seen where a road comes up to a T intersection or a major throughway, and we want to ensure that that side road does catch the stop sign or other indication, and the transverse rumble strips are used as a good notice to the driver. But we want to ensure that we are maintaining those during construction, as indicated in the bulletin. We want to ensure that we're not confusing the temporary rumble strips for two-lane applications that are addressed in Index 102. But again, please look at the design standards for both of those applications and use the appropriate pay item for the situations in your project. Retaining walls. Retaining walls are normally designed by a structures engineer and frequently associated with a bridge. However, the pay items for the retaining walls should always be loaded in the roadway category, regardless of where those plan sheets are located. The reason for this is you may have multiple walls, multiple bridges, and the retaining walls are not part of that structure identification number for the category. This is not something that's new, but it is something that we have tried to enforce recently. So please look out there for the pay items, and when you're loading them in the designer interface, please ensure that they are in the roadway category. Performance turf. This is one that we did change in 2018 that's effective with our January 2019 lettings, if not implemented earlier. And while we're still paying per area, we wanted to change that from the plan view to the measured along the slope. This does not significantly change the quantity for most locations, but if you do happen to have a steep slope, perhaps along an overpass, those quantities might be affected in a more significant way. But please look at the CADD tools that are available to help you to get those corrections so that the quantities are along the slope. This is one of those that dollar-wise does not affect our big contractors or the overall cost in a significant manner, but it does help our small businesses where these small quantities may add up and affect their bottom line and the quantities that they are paid. So we do want to ensure that our small contractors are paid accurately and fairly for these locations. Landscaping. We've seen a lot of changes to landscaping over past years, and we are making some additional changes coming up. And right now, we still have our standalone contracts that are normally using the Landscape Complete lump sum pay item. There are some landscape items that are permitted within a construction contract, but they do need to meet the current policy requirements for that landscape lump sum item within construction. So please work with your district specs and estimates offices to ensure that you're using the right items, within the correct contract. Our landscape maintenance varies by district. It may be either push button or work document type contracts. Some may have known scope, others may use asset maintenance. Again, we want to continue to work with our maintenance offices to ensure that those are used as needed. In all cases, we want to ensure that the bidder has all information that's needed to produce a bid. So we need to ensure that they have the appropriate pay items, the types of plants, including their scientific names. They need to know the quantities and the locations. Most projects using landscape plans will use a landscape tabulation sheet. There are some summary boxes that have been approved for use with landscaping. But as always, our goal is to ensure that the information is clear and complete, again, so that that bidder has the information that they need. We have used allowed a lot of flexibility with the landscape items. So please work with your district estimates office to ensure that you've got the latest information available. Moving on to the 600s with our signalization. There have been some confusion in use of the mid-block crossings and the RRFBs, or rapid rectangular flashing beacons. We are currently under an interim approval for Florida from the Federal Highway Association for the mid-block crossings to be used at crosswalks. And we have seen some minor updates to specification section 654, but please remember that the RRFB, the rapid rectangular flashing beacon, is paid for a complete assembly. So that means everything from the pole and its foundation up through the flashing lights, the signs, the pedestrian detector, etc., are all included in the cost of the assembly. The actual light bars are not to be used for other applications unless there's a project-specific application that has been approved. Our Section 660 items are for vehicle detectors, and our 665 items are for pedestrian detectors. Please ensure that the appropriate item is being used for the correct application, as there are APL items that correspond to each of those different specifications and pay items. So we don't want to be mixing those up for any types of conflicts within the plans. Also, we want to ensure that we do not specify a particular brand or product due to the contractor selection options available on the approved products list. Traffic monitoring sites. We have 3 possible types of traffic monitoring sites, and they are those that are used by traffic ops, just doing counter type activities, and they use our standard 600 series of pay items. The second is the much more common transportation statistics. They use the 695 items for counting, as well as recording the weight and size of the vehicle. Finally, we have the motor carrier compliance or mix-saw type items in the 770s that are really looking at our interstate truck traffic. And just want to draw your attention, those 695 items are for the Transtat office items only, so that we are using the appropriate item for the necessary specifications. For signalization plans, if you've got traffic ops sites, that's where they should be located. For Transtat items, they should be located in the roadway plans, and that's in accordance with the FDM. And if you have motor carrier or mix-saw sites, generally they are used in conjunction with either architectural or roadway plans. If you have any questions or concerns on this, please work with us. I know that we are working with both the transportation statistics and the motor carrier compliance offices to update their available specifications and pay items. Section 700. We have had recent development with the 706 and 707 II RPMs, or internally illuminated RPMs. The internally illuminated RPMs are moving from current developmental specification over to a standard specification, and the guidance will be available as far as when to use or not use the internally illuminated items. We want to draw attention to this because the internally illuminated are significantly more expensive than a standard RPM. We've seen prices from $100 to $200 for the internally illuminated versus the standard $3 to $5 for a normal raised pavement marker. The normal RPMs also are included under the 710-90 pay item for final surface markings, and separate payment is only made under Section 706 if you've got a situation without other final surface pavement markings. Again, if there's any comments or concerns on these, please work with your district estimates office. We've had many questions regarding the removal of thermoplastic, and the specification currently reads, payment for removal of conflicting markings will be in accordance with 102-5.8. Payment for removal of non-conflicting markings will be paid separately. So we use the separate payment for removal of thermoplastic for those non-conflicting situations where we need to remove a stripe due to excessive thickness, and the same marking, that non-conflicting marking, is placed in the exact same location. Everything else is identified as a conflicting marking, and there's no separate payment. So if you're just removing an unnecessary marking that is in conflict with your plans or proposed next phase, there is no separate payment for that. It's included under that 102, which resorts to the lump sum MOT. We are looking at options for that to come out in the future, but we need to have ongoing discussions with both the roadway and construction office before any changes will occur with this one. 715 addresses our highway lighting, and specifically we want to draw attention to our special design light poles. Designers should ensure that the proposed light poles meet load resistance factor design, or LRFD requirements for the wind load. I know we have many local agencies that just want to choose a pretty light pole. And while we do want to have aesthetically pleasing elements out there, we never want to have the aesthetics overriding our safety requirements for the loads. If you're calling for a proprietary product, please remember that you do need to follow the procedure for approval. Our 800 items are reserved for mass transit, specifically any rail, airport, or seaport projects. And while they're used infrequently, we are happy to expand them as needed for individual projects. So please let us know if we can assist you with any mass transit items. The 900 items are for our developmental items. So a pattern beginning with a 918 or soon to be 919 will be our developmental items for either 2018 or 2019 or future years, followed by that middle group of digits that represent the specification section, and then the next available item as approved. We also have a few special use items beginning with 999, and these are generally our do not bid items that are used either for accounting purposes or for encumbering funds that are not directly paid to the contractor. Again, we'll remind you the initial contingency that shows up on every project, as well as the speed and law enforcement that may be needed that is paid by the department and controlled by the engineer. Our final group of items is the 1000 series used by utilities. These are generally used for utility work by highway contractor. Normally we see those under phase 56 projects, but we did have some rule changes in which case utility work by highway contractor could be loaded under the phase 52 project. So please work with the current financial services handbook so that we are loading them under the correct category or phase for your project. We do want to ensure that the items are loaded in the utility category so that we can track their application. If you have other roadway type work that's to be performed for the utility, please work with your district estimates office, as we generally don't see our roadway items used by the utility phases. There are a few maintenance items available throughout our groups of pay items, but please be aware that they often have specifications specifically for the maintenance use. The method of measurement may be updated to meet their specific needs. We may also have other push button or work document type items for that known scope work. And we sometimes adjust our pay items as needed for their unique needs. So there are some ongoing cleanup efforts that are underway, and we will also be updating the specifications to correspond to those pay items. But please let us know if we can assist you in any way with any maintenance item or for maintenance activities on a construction type project. Oh my, errors. Yes, we do occasionally encounter errors. Sometimes we find an inconsistency between the FDM, the standard plans, the BOE, specs, or other documents. If you happen to run across one of those, please bring it to the attention of the responsible offices. We are human, and while we try to minimize those, they do occasionally occur. and we do want to resolve those as soon as possible. What do we do if a reviewer recommends a note or a revision that's against one of the department's handbooks, manuals, or other policy? Please bring it to the attention of the project manager or ask for help from the responsible office. We always want to do the right thing. It may not be the easy thing to do, but we do want to do the right thing to ensure our consistency and to minimize any potential claims or disruptions to our construction activities. So please let us know, and help is always available. As always, we appreciate your time in following through and learning more about the basis of estimates and the other subjects that are available for our project managers. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me. Again, I'm with the Program Management Office, the Estimate Support section. My email address and phone number are available there, or we have a complete contact list available on our Program Management Office's webpage. Thank you, and have a great day.